Why you should be worried about India's second COVID-19 wave. So if you do not know, India is facing a very horrible second wave of COVID, even worse than the first. So you look at this is India. I'm gonna go to India's. Yeah, India is here. India is this. This is of the confirmed cases is the second worst in terms of normal cases in the world. Here, but experts are saying that India is actually the worst hit country in the world. Yep, India is the worst hit country in the world, and that is due to the world testing numbers. If you look at tests per person in India, here's the second wave in India. It has gone up. It's still going up day by day. It's still expected to go up. Same thing with deaths. It's still going up. Expected. It's still going up massively here, and it's getting worse in the country. But you look at the tests per person. You'll go here. If India tested like America did, they would have had more cases in here. Okay, here, here. So yeah, they finally have data for some of the countries that had no data. For Sweden, Belgium, Netherlands, and France. But you look at India tests per person compared to America is 188,000. So out of 262 million. So India, if it had the same amount of tests as America, it would have had per person, okay, 50 million cases, which is more than America, far more than America. Yeah, and the experts are saying this. Even the experts are saying this. The experts are saying that India is actually the worst hit country here. Now India is reaching 200,000 a day. Day. Here. That there are between 42 and 41, 26 to 32 infections for every reported case. For every reported infection in India, here. So if it's accurate in India, here. If the real number in India is somewhere around 400 million, that is a lot. That is 1/3 of India's population. 1/3 of India's population, is infected. Here, the United States, which is more than the entire population of the United States, you know, which means that a billion people are still not infected. There's still plenty of room for infection, even though a lot of people are already being infected. So, and there's also variants going on in India. There's also another variant going on, and I believe that variants, they infect people who already have had it, which is the big problem. Which is why you see Brazil having that resurgence in cases, and Brazil hasn't really tested that much either. Brazil, they're saying that Brazil's variants, which is like 4 or 5 Brazilian variants now. This is what happened when the Brazilian variants hit. Here this is the cases. This is the deaths. And the deaths are projected to reach 571,000 if nothing is done. Okay, here. And this is, here. So, yeah, then we have new cases today, and it seems that Iran is the second worst infected country today. Not every country has their cases done. Like France and Turkey have not had have not done their daily. But you can see here, Asia is getting worse. It's getting worse in Asia, even in places, I believe, like Japan. It's getting worse rather than better. Yeah, it's getting worse in Japan rather than better. Okay, it's getting worse in the Middle East. Okay, even countries that's going down in, okay, like Jordan, It's probably gonna start going back up in Israel, which means Israel's probably gonna reach 1 million cases if it goes back up in that country. Yeah, but you have the Middle East. We have Iran 25,000, Iraq 7,000. You know, not a lot of Middle Eastern countries have had done, but UAE 1,000, 1,900. Yeah, Oman 1,000, Qatar and Saudi Arabia nearly 1,000. Nepal's cases are going back up. Cambodia is reaching record cases again. I'm surprised Vietnam's hasn't gone up that much. No, it is actually going up in Vietnam. So Vietnam is starting to go up again. Thailand is recording 1,000 cases a day now. And Southeast Asia was the least affected area on the planet. Now they're dealing with a wave. Of course, they're dealing with the wave. Because they look at cases per person. Papua New Guinea has passed 1,000 per person. Madagascar has passed 1,000 cases per person. Per 1 million people. And yep, there we go. So India. People should really be worried about what's going on in India. People are like, oh yeah, it was so bad in America, but nobody ever, they weren't worried we weren't worried what was going on in Europe, and it came here. What was going on in Europe, it came here. Same thing with Brazil. Okay, they're saying that we should be worried about what's happening in Brazil. Okay, because there are other countries. Okay, if we really want to stop the virus from spreading here, we should stop allowing people to go to high risk areas. Okay, India and Brazil and Iran are all high risk areas. All areas high risk currently. Same thing with Eastern Europe. Okay, Eastern Europe is currently pretty high risk area as well, like Poland. Okay, you look at Poland data here. This is Poland's data here. It is going down in Poland, actually, so it isn't high risk anymore. Poland's data is going down. But this is Poland's data. The data of Poland here. But they also confirmed another statistic that is also pretty worrying. Okay, which is obesity. That obesity, the other main risk factor besides AIDS is obesity. Okay, you look at the total amount of deaths. Okay, you see that countries like Mexico and America, despite having younger populations than Europe, it has more older populations, have a higher obesity per capita. Why does the UK have higher amount of deaths than Italy? Because let's go look at the obesity index. This is the map of the obesity index. You can see here that some of these countries that have disproportionate amount of deaths working here is Hungary, Czech Republic, UK, and United States, and Mexico. Okay, all of these countries have a disproportionate amount of deaths. Czechia has 2,642. Hungary is second. No, it's third place. Czechia is second place. If you get the obesity map, they are pretty high on that list. Okay, here. Okay. Then we have other countries like Bosnia and Herzegovina, which has a much older population. Then we have the UK, USA, and Mexico. Okay. All are pretty high on the obesity index list. Okay. The only real exception to this is the Middle East. The Middle East doesn't really have many countries. Lebanon is probably going to be the first country to pass this, but Middle East is the one exception to this list. To this thing. Because you look at Turkey. Turkey's only at 19. Okay. Turkey's only at 19 on the list. Iraq is only at 31. But Iraq doesn't really have many cases compared to the rest of the world. Though it has a lot of cases. It does have a lot of cases. Okay, here. But you look at, Argentina and Chile. Argentina and Chile have are also higher. Chile and Argentina are 41 and 42, 43, and they are pretty high up on the list too. Uruguay, these countries in the Middle East, and again, a lot of these countries in the Middle East have younger populations, but they're still having but they're higher, but they're still pretty high. Like Saudi Arabia, pretty young populations, but still 7,000. South Africa, let's just look at South Africa versus the rest of Africa. Okay, South Africa versus the rest of Africa. South Africa and Tunisia have the highest death rates. Okay, but they're pretty high on the obesity index. Egypt, 12,000 out of 222,000. Egypt is pretty high on this list. Libya, which is fifth on Africa's list, they're pretty high up on the obesity index. Algeria is pretty high up. It's a bit lower, but Morocco's pretty high up too. Go to Asia. Here you have Lebanon, pretty high up on Asia. Jordan, also a really rolling one. Iran, Turkey, the highest ones in Asia are, again, the more obese countries. Okay? And they had confirmed that in a study. Same thing with Panama and Costa Rica and Dominican Republic. Canada, as well. Okay, same thing with North America, USA, Mexico, Panama. Costa Rica isn't that high, but the USA and Mexico are pretty high up on this list. Number one, number two. Okay, and look at the obesity map. You can clearly see that USA and Mexico are pretty high up, pretty higher up compared to the rest of the American continents. Okay, in Canada too. Same thing with Europe. The most obese countries in Europe are pretty high up on the list. Hungary, Czechia, and UK. Same thing with the highest in Asia. Okay, lots of Asian countries still have pretty young populations. Egypt has an average age of like 23 years old. Egypt still has a pretty high death rate, and that is probably linked to obesity as well. Same thing with the UAE has a pretty young population as well. UAE has a pretty young population as well. Most of UAE's population is around 20 to 30 years old. But UAE, because despite the young population, still is pretty high up on, it still has a lot of deceased as well. Okay, but the countries that are furthest on the list, they are the least obese. Okay, China, Japan, Vietnam, India, the Indian subcontinent, here. And it didn't really affect Polynesia that much. So, there we go. So that is the update.